Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is episode 15 now. Finally,
15.
we are here. Season 2, still. A random album review. For those of you who do not already know, I'm Larry.
And I'm Brian.
And the way this works is each week, Brian and I alternate choosing an album for the other person to listen to off camera. Then we get on camera, we discuss the album a little bit. We talk about, maybe some of the way it made us feel. We talk about the background information. We get like a brief history lesson on the artist. We choose, some of our favorite songs, least favorite songs if we have any, which typically we don't. And we give them a score, and then we move on and we do it again next week.
Yep.
Yep.
But I don't know about brief history, especially some of my groups. Well,
Yeah, I
talking
mean,
some of my groups are just literally a background because there's nothing on them in
yeah. I mean, that's just
American articles.
that's the nature
So
of newer artists. To be fair, because
I
like
think
if I were to do, just as an example, if I were to do Zach Bryan, for example, a newer country artist,
hmm
there's only so much information you're gonna find.
yeah, but
There's
mine's
only so
also
much
yeah
there.
yeah mine's also locked behind the language barrier. So there's
Yes.
no if there's not a big following of the artists I like, and I'm not gonna find much. So
Yeah, it's even
I try my
harder then.
best. But
Um,
hey,
we're here. We do it
classic
live.
guitar song this week.
All-time classic in many capacities. Um, this week, Brian, I got to choose. Obviously, I went with one of the most pivotal metal albums of all time, given the influence of the group, and even some of the members that have been a part of this group over the years, as they've had several different lineups. I chose a the second studio album from English metal band Black Sabbath. I chose Paranoid, which released September 18th of 1970 in the UK. For some reason, I don't know. This is something I had to look into, why they do like delayed releases and maybe why they did them more. I guess it's like a distribution thing, but the album didn't release until January 7th of 1971 in the United States.
Still older than my dad.
Very old album. It is 54. That's that's crazy.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, the band has gone through several different iterations of members throughout the years. The only constant that they've had throughout all of these years is their guitarist and metal legend Tony Iommi. For Paranoid, the other members of the group at the time, which were also the original members of the group for the first album, and I believe the first 6 albums are all the same members. We have the aforementioned Tony Iommi on guitar, Geezer Butler on the bass, Bill Ward on the drums, and the Prince of Darkness himself on vocals. Very young at the time, Ozzy Osbourne, looking much more healthy than he does these days. But
True.
he is very old, one of the greatest of all time, one of the greatest to ever do it. I mean, he was so big in Black Sabbath. He went on to do everything he's done solo. One of the biggest musicians to ever walk this planet. The album had no problem reaching number one on the UK album charts upon its release. It was assisted by the release of the title track and lead single Paranoid. They released it, I believe, like a month and a half before the album was due to release. And Meanwhile, in the US, because they didn't release Paranoid as a single in the US, and they released it obviously a few months later, the hype had kind of died down a little bit. The album only peaked at number 12 in the US, unfortunately. But until 2013,
Unlucky.
it is unlucky. But, you know, they've never been a massive group. Like, I don't know, it's weird because obviously it's one of the most pivotal metal groups of all time. A name so many people know, but they only have two number one albums of all time, and they were only number one albums in the UK,
Oh,
nowhere else. This album,
wow.
and then their 2013 release, I cannot remember the name of it to save my life. Not my
I
favorite
got
album,
you.
personally.
Is it 2013?
Yes.
All right, I'll find it. You keep talking.
Okay, sure. The album was or has certified sold just shy of 5 million albums worldwide, including being certified platinum one time in Canada, one time in Italy, one time in the UK, and four times in the US.
Is it 13?
Yes.
Okay.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that. When you said, I thought you meant like, is it 2013, not the album title's name? Yes.
The album
The album
title name is
title is just
13.
13. You are right. That went clear over my head. Wow. All right.
I mean, you also did answer it correctly. Like it was 13.
It
Yes,
was.
you did you did answer my question. Anyway, back to 1970.
um. So the album was originally planned to be named War Pigs, named after the opening track of the album. However, the title was changed for reasons that some people can't exactly agree on, which makes me think, obviously, there's some controversy behind the scenes here, and there were some strings being pulled in certain directions, and given how by the end of the 1970s, by 1979, Ozzy Osbourne was completely done with Black Sabbath. He had mentally checked out. And if you listen to the last album of Black Sabbath that had Ozzy Osbourne before he would return years later, you can very much hear in Ozzy Osbourne's voice that he was just done. Like he did not want to be doing this anymore. Um, but Osbourne basically he said that the reason why they changed the title from War Pigs to Paranoid was because the label thought that the record would perform better if it was named the same thing as the lead single that was released. Which, I mean, it makes sense. Granted, the single was doing well. But then you have behind the scene Tony Iommi, who basically said that the whole premise of the songs War Pig or of the song War Pigs, which I'll get into very briefly, is it's a song about being anti-war, and the label thought that that was a bad idea.
Mm,
And given
classic.
the late 60s, early 70s, what war was going on at the time, there was a lot of tension regarding, whether or not the war needed to be going on, whether or not certain global powers needed to be dabbling their fingers where it didn't belong. Um, so, getting into the songs really quickly that I did want to touch on. Um, we have War Pigs, which originally Butler, he's the person responsible for writing the song. He originally wanted it to be called Walpurgis, which is apparently I did a little bit of research into it and it's kind of murky, but it's essentially, in his own words as well, it's essentially the satanic form of Christmas. But it's not like it's not a spiritual thing. It's more of I guess the idea of there are people in governments that are pushing for war here. Then this is the connection to the idea of the album, the name of the song. There are people in governments that have power that are pushing for war, and then they're sending people like you and me to go out and fight these wars.
Mm,
Meanwhile, the citizens, people like you and me that are going out to fight these wars, we get treated like garbage, crap.
yeah.
And here we are 54 years later. Has anything changed?
Things don't change that fast, Larry. You know this.
War. War never changes.
What's that one song? War. What is it good for?
I actually don't know what song you're talking about.
What? Jackie Chan sang it. And
Oh,
then
yeah, I do
Chris
not
Tucker
know what
was
you're talking
like,
about.
Chris Tucker was like, "Nah, that's how you sing it." It's called War.
You'll have to show me after this really briefly.
War by
Um,
Edwin Starr.
yeah, it does not ring a bell. I'll be honest.
What? This guy. Anyway.
But the record company, they wanted to change the title of Walpurgis. They didn't like the idea of the ties to Satanism.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of understandable. The 70s. Um, so they changed the title to War Pigs, which
Close enough.
still very fitting. It has a very similar sound to it. It gives a very similar sense. The meaning of the song is still there, and I don't know. It just kind of works. Um, it's all about painting war, and again with what was going on at the time in the world, likely the Vietnam War, and it was all about painting what was going on in Vietnam as being as awful and horrendous as it really was. There were, and again, this is one of those areas where history gets really wishy washy. But
Mm-hmm.
some of the members of the band talked about the tensions that were going on in the UK at the time and how there were borderline, there were droves of people out in the streets, borderline, like ready to full blown riot, and they were having to be suppressed. And there's no like official reports of it, and it's one of those things where did it happen? Did it not? I don't
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
know. Real quick, just wanted to touch on a few of the lyrics from War Pigs. That I mean are kind of like I don't know, they're just dead giveaway to what they were going for with the idea of the song. Generals
Mm-hmm.
gathered in their masses, just like witches at black masses. I also that's I know he rhymes masses with masses. I know,
But.
but like I don't know. Every time I hear that line, after hearing the very long drawn out intro with the air raid siren, by the way, which
Mm-hmm.
chef's kiss, that is just perfection. I love that intro. It's so iconic. I hear it every time, and like in the worst way possible. Like I feel very I don't know, unnerved. Hearing air raid sirens just makes me feel a little wigged out, but also at the same time I'm ready to fight. I don't know what it is.
Song does the absolute opposite effect of what
It
they're
does.
saying.
If I would have had that playing last night during pool, it would have been over.
You would
Uh,
have lost.
we would have lost still. Uh, and then in the bridge, which this is a good majority portion of the bridge, you have politicians hide themselves away. They only started the war. Why should they go out to fight? They leave that all to the poor. Time will tell on their power minds, making war just for fun. Yeah, and I mean, again, here we are 54 years later, and where you kind of see the same things happening, where people are just being sent out to basically be fodder, basically be another guy. Oh, thank you. Thank you for your service, buddy.
Thanks,
Um,
guys.
Thanks for doing what you needed to for your country. So honorable. Um, the second track I wanted to highlight is Paranoid, the lead single, the title track here. Um, the album's title track, and this is just one of those like little facts that I just really love. This song was not meant to be on this album. This song was a complete afterthought. They had 7 songs planned, and the label was like, I think the album is just a little too short. It was like 38 minutes or something at the time, 39 minutes, something of the nature. So they asked him to try to create one more song, and they wrote this song in 25 minutes sitting in the studio. Tony Iommi literally
That's
just sat there,
crazy.
like they were like, like what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Like we need to make a song. We want this album to come out as soon as possible. We got to do something now. And literally just sitting there, Tony Iommi just plays that iconic riff, the riff that opens the song, and Ozzy Osbourne just immediately he just says like the wheels in his head started cranking. You could see steam coming out of his ears, and in 25 minutes they created arguably one of the greatest metal songs of all time, and that's amazing to me. that is just that is I don't know, at the core of it, that is just one of the most metal things about I don't know. That's music.
That's so metal, dude. Oh my
That's what I'm
god.
saying, Brian. God, man. So the lyrics were written by and about the bassist Geezer Butler, which, by the way, I did want to say this earlier. The name Geezer, awesome. I love that name.
No. He's an old geezer at this point, dude.
No. There's a difference.
I
There's a
said it.
difference between being an old geezer and being geezer.
Nah, but now he's an old geezer.
Uh, More than likely, yeah, probably.
Or
The
not Butler though, but
the band often referred to him as being paranoid, which is why this song was all about him. He didn't know what paranoid meant though. He just kind of went along with it. Um,
what?
the song is about his feelings, being a depressed teenager, and him thinking about life, and basically in his head convincing himself that he was insane because medical assistance and mental health assistance at the time in the 70s in the UK, it didn't exist
Yeah,
simply. So
sounds like a lot of places. I'll be honest here.
yeah. There was like nowhere in the 70s that cared. You're mentally broken. Have some electricity.
Oops, you're
Ah,
mentally broken. Let's into the war. Yeah,
send
sounds
you
good.
off.
Yeah,
See you
go
later.
get it. Go get us that nuke. 75 kill streak. Come on.
75?
I forget. I don't know what the numbers are. I've never played COD in my life,
It's it's 30.
or at least like multiplayer.
That's fair.
I've only played zombies with you,
That's
so.
fair. That's fair. The third song, the final song I wanted to touch on here, another one of just, I mean, one of the most iconic metal songs of all time. You have Iron Man, the absolutely iconic opening with the just long, drawn out, almost what I would describe as bleeding, drawn out notes that are done by playing above the head of the guitar. It's a very interesting. I'll have to show you at some point what I mean. Um,
Hmm.
but it's a very specific way you play. You basically play a note that isn't even designed for the guitar. You play it like off the fretboard. It's really cool. Anyway,
Mm.
um, the song Iron Man is about a man that is basically equipped with metal armor,
Oh
and
my god, is it the Iron Man?
is it?
Kate Jarvis.
Could it be? Is it him?
Hmm.
No. But he has an iron suit, and he basically goes through time and like goes to the apocalypse and fights. I don't know what else to say. That's what the song's
I
about.
mean, coincidentally, I'm listening to it right now, so
I mean,
I'm reading the lyrics.
I'm not wrong.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 4 more lines, and the song has 2 more minutes on it.
Yes, it's a very instrumental driven song.
Hmm.
A lot of this album is very instrumental driven. Very good album overall. One thing
Hmm.
really quick before we get into the closing segments here. Another one of my like little known facts that I think is really funny is, and I think you may have seen it in my notes already.
Yeah,
The song Iron Man was originally supposed to be called Iron Bloke.
Iron Bloke is this. So in the song, just say bloke instead of man.
That's what they were gonna go for, but they just couldn't get the timing scheme down for bloke versus man in the rhyme
But
scheme.
Iron Bloke to
So
spread fear.
they had to change it. It's so
Oh
goofy,
my
man.
god.
So goofy. So Brian, now that you have heard all about Black Sabbath, all about Paranoid, you know about
Damn. Yeah, Iron Bloke.
one of the most iconic metal songs being written in 20 minutes. You know about Iron Bloke. Do you have any favorite songs? Any songs that stood out to you?
Stongs. Yeah, let's do the
Stongs.
Stongs. Um,
songs.
yeah, on my notes here, I got War Pigs and Paranoid. I mean, banger songs. But I got a weird banger in there, right? Hear me out.
Listening.
Hand of Doom.
Honestly, yeah, it's solid. It's solid. It's solid. There's a few songs that I think are definitely a little bit like, especially looking over here like at the plays that each song has on Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few songs at the end of this album that I think are very underappreciated in terms of how much they get
Well, I mean,
listened to.
Hand of Doom's a seven. Like, okay, well, I say that, but War Pigs is only 8 minutes long. But like, you know, what I mean, like, you're near the end of the album, you feel like you've been on for a while. And you're like, you look at your phone, you're like, oh, I'm not. I'm like just about halfway through, a
Yeah.
bit more than halfway through. Like, I'm whatever.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely there are some songs at the end of this album that are very hidden gems. I don't mind Hand of Doom. It's not my favorite of the tracks at the end of the album, but I I, I definitely like that you put that on there because, like I said, I think there's some hidden gems towards the end of this album that I think they get overshadowed because the beginning of this album, the first four songs, War Pigs, incredible, Paranoid, incredible, Planet Caravan is very different compared to the first two songs on this album. Very different vibe, much
Mm-hmm.
slower, different instruments being used. There's a flute, there's a piano. It's all over the place. Iron Man, another banger. But then the last four songs just kind of get, I don't know, they kind of get pushed to the side just because they're not in that top four with those four songs that open this album. Um, Me personally, I agree with you. Paranoid and War Pigs, absolutely incredible. Incredible songs. If I do, I guess if I did have to choose, like an honorable mention here, I would go probably with Jack the Stripper at the end. I love that song.
That was pretty good.
Very fun song to end the album on. Um, I'm gonna assume. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
pretty safe to assume at this point you don't have any least favorites this week.
No,
Okay, I don't either.
not really.
So you know what that means, Brian.
What?
What are you giving this album out of 10?
Oh yeah, maybe a casual 8.6 out of 10.
8.6. Okay. All right. I think
I
I've not to cut you
I
off real quick. I think I
yeah,
found
good.
a very fine line here into your music path with the metal, and I think like you said
Good.
that's because of the baby metal and a few other acts that you've
I
listened
mean,
to.
I apparently gave Metallica a low score, so. But I guess I don't know. What's
Mm,
Metallica though? It's a bit
yeah, I mean
different.
everybody has their opinions on it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
What were you going to say before I interrupt you? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say like, um, yeah. I just like old metal.
Yeah, I mean
I mean, it hits sometimes.
there is something about just in I don't know, in the best way there is something, and granted this we're listening to it on Spotify, we're listening to a
Mm-hmm.
remastered edition that was probably remastered two maybe three times, however many times now in the 54 years. um it doesn't sound quite as raw as it may have on like an original or I almost said an original CD, but that would not have been the thing.
Would have been a CD back then either.
Yeah, it would not have been a CD. On an original copy, obviously, it would have sounded very raw, but there's something about, even with the remastering, there's something about how raw the very early metal and very early rock and roll sounds, the way you can hear everything still and everything sounds very purposeful. It doesn't feel like anything's out of place. I don't know. There's just something very, I guess, heartwarming about it to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So you gave this an 8.6. I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. So not too far off.
All right, all right, all
That's
right.
that's that might be one of our
Not too
closest,
bad.
honestly.
Yeah,
Pretty close, if not the
definitely a
closest.
lot, definitely very close.
So anything else you want to cover this week, Brian?
Mm. No, not really.
Okay. Well, if you guys have listened to Paranoid before, or I guess any Black Sabbath, What do you know about the band? What do you think about the band? What do you think
What do
about
you
the?
know about the band that I don't?
What do you? Yeah, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I miss. Maybe I submit. Maybe I missed something very big, very important. Um, let us know what you thought of the album if you have listened to it before. If you haven't listened to it before, give it a listen. Give us a like. Give us comments. Subscribe. Give us a rating on Apple and Spotify. I don't really know how those things work quite yet. Still.
Mhm.
Yeah. We will see you guys next week.
Yeah.
See ya.